Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization with your daily video update for September 2nd, 2025. Well, we've come off a couple of days of extraordinary developments with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting in Tianjin, China. And we're moving into the next phase of the week with the celebration of the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II in China, and also the Far Eastern Economic Forum in Vladivostok, Russia. Now, Helga Zepp-LaRouche, in commenting on the Shanghai Cooperation Organization conference, said the world has entered a new phase of history. The unipolar order is over. This is something which should be celebrated. Unfortunately, in the West, this is seen as a great tragedy, and we see the moves toward war, toward provocation, escalating. The Europeans are continuing to meet to discuss the need to go to war with Russia. The attempt to sabotage the results of the Trump-Putin meeting in Alaska, and also to keep the Gaza fighting alive while Tony Blair was in Washington meeting with President Trump to discuss the way of, you might say, politely driving the Palestinians out of Gaza. So let's start with the positive, the agenda for development and security in Asia from the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting. Now, what's clear is the center of the world economic processes has shifted to Asia, or to Eurasia. And sorry, Halford Mackinder is probably turning over in his grave, because this is the fear the British have had for a century and a half, that Eurasia would become the focal point, and it would include probably Europe as well as Russia and China. And what would be left on the outside would be the United Kingdom and the British Empire and the European imperial powers. The United States has a choice which way to go. But the Shanghai Cooperation Organization event was extraordinary. There was a bilateral meeting between Prime Minister Modi of India and President Xi of China, where they talked about mutual concerns for development and benefit. Also, Putin met with Xi, and there'll be more meetings between Putin and Xi in the days ahead. The emphasis is on connective infrastructure, how to pull together the cooperation of the various countries in Eurasia to mine the resources, but deploy them for the benefit of the people of their countries. Now, there are a couple of particular projects that were discussed. The International North-South Transportation Corridor, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, both of which are very much a part of a central infrastructure development. But also, perhaps, the Bering Strait Tunnel was on the agenda, or will be on the agenda in Beijing. We'll see. Now, the idea of connectivity and cooperation for mutual benefit, that's the issue: security and economic cooperation. President Xi spoke of the Shanghai spirit, and he defined it in the following terms: mutual trust, mutual benefit, equality, consultation, respect for diversity of civilizations, and persistent pursuit of common economic development. Now, what was clear in what Xi said and in Putin's response, as well as the other leaders who were there, is that this project, this whole process, is open to the West. The United States and Europe could join. Instead, what we're seeing is a pulling together of the war party. Macron of France has called for a meeting for Thursday of the so-called coalition of the willing. The willing for what? The willing to go to war with Russia, to defend the bankrupt, broken Ukrainian project of NATO, of London, and Wall Street. The whole idea of this coalition was laid out on a tour by Ursula von der Leyen of the European Union, who presented the buildup of military in Eastern Europe as necessary. Why? Because, in her words, Putin is a predator. Now, Meanwhile, most of the rest of the world looks at that and says, what's wrong with this woman? How crazy can she be? There are people talking about how crazy Friedrich Merz, the Chancellor of Germany, is, how Macron's imitation of a little Napoleon is not in the interest of France, and he's working on behalf of the City of London. And of course, as I mentioned, having Tony Blair show up in Washington as a spokesman for peace in the Middle East, given what Blair did to use faked intelligence to launch the war against Iraq, and Blair's consistent policy of using the British clash of civilizations theory to break up the potential for an overturn of the British Empire. Well, we're seeing that much of the world is turning away from that. Now, tomorrow there'll be the celebration of the 80th anniversary of the victory over fascism in World War II with the final defeat of Japan. There'll be a number of heads of states in Beijing, including Putin, including Xi Jinping. And then from September 3rd to September 6th, in Vladivostok, Russia, there will be the Eastern Economic Forum. Now, one of the interesting things about the SCO meeting, Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting, is that Putin completely endorsed Xi's vision of multilateralism. And what Xi said is that the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is ushering in a better future through infrastructure development, through connectivity. Now, Putin, in responding to this, described the SCO as, quote, a powerful driver for global economic development processes, unquote. And he's described it also as he said they're working on creating a new investment platform of the SCO in parallel to the BRICS Development Bank to replace what he called the failed destructive Eurocentric and Euro-Atlantic models. Meanwhile, von der Leyen, Macron, Starmer, Merz are trying to hold together the failed economic model of the West. It's not going to work. The majority of the world is moving away from that, and moving away from that in a direction which offers the West a way out of going down with the Titanic. Now, further, there's an opportunity coming up later this month when the United Nations General Assembly convenes in New York, and we'll have a special session on ending the war, or the killing, I should say, the genocide in Gaza, using the Uniting for Peace Initiative, Resolution 337, to allow the UN General Assembly to override the blocking going on from the Security Council to take measures and steps to end the fighting. Now, this is quite significant because every time it comes before the UN Security Council, the US has vetoed measures to stop the fighting. So now the potential exists within the UN General Assembly to take steps to stop it, which should include sanctions against Israel. It should include an end to the fighting, a demand for a ceasefire, and so on. We're seeing a shift in the world against Israel, not against Israel as a so-called Jewish state, but against Israel as a nation carrying out a barbaric practice of ethnic cleansing against the Palestinian population. So the opportunity is there for diplomacy, for seeking mutual benefit. And of course, in terms of the Southwest Asia, the mutual benefit comes from Lyndon LaRouche's proposed idea of an oasis project. Collaboration to desalinate seawater using nuclear energy, using other forms of energy, to green the desert. This has been the dream for many, many generations, and it's within reach, provided the West drops its provocations and instead orients toward the spirit of Shanghai, which was so visible to the rest of the world at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting. And if you haven't heard about it, it's because you live in the West where there's a bubble of censorship, corruption, and lies. So go to the LaRoucheOrganization.com to get the real story of what's going on. And we'll have more of